Hello, hello, and welcome to PD in your PJs. I'm Julie from Seesaw. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk about how to create your own activities. It's a really exciting session we have planned for you tonight. Like I said, my name is Julie, and I'm really just honored that you would take time out of your busy work week to join us to talk about Seesaw. I was a high school ELA teacher for 18 years, and now I'm on the teacher community team at Seesaw. I would love it if you could find me on Twitter and give me a follow. I'm at EdTech Julie J. I share a lot of tips and resources about Seesaw, of course, and you can connect with our whole team on Twitter at Seesaw. Now, I also need to tell you about something that you might not know, which is that I have a special guest here with me tonight. Heather from San Antonio is here, and she's going to take over the presentation here in a little bit. She has awesome ideas to share with you about the activities that she's been creating for her students. But I'm going to keep talking here for a while, and then I'll turn it over to her to share some cool tips and ideas she has for you. You're going to be really excited and impressed. Just a quick reminder, too, that these slides are coming your way shortly after we conclude our live presentation. So you'll be able to open these slides and look through them in a little more detail and click on all the links that you see there. Both Heather and I are sharing resources with you, and you'll see those linked in the slides. Of course, also the recording of this training is coming your way, and a certificate to document that you were here. So that might be helpful for you too with your own PD requirements in your school. Now, this training is just about creating activities. So if you are brand new to Seesaw and you're just getting started and you need more help about how to set up a class or how to add students or that type of thing, make sure you're checking out the webinars called Brand New to Seesaw for your grade level. And I've put a link there for you. Make sure you've watched one of those trainings too, because those are going to be the ones that really help you get oriented with Seesaw. Okay, so we're talking tonight about creating activities, but I have a screenshot there for you of the activity library just to kind of remind you that our newly expanded activity library in Seesaw has thousands of teacher created activities that are ready to go for you and your students. And like I said, those are all created by teachers who've contributed them to our library. So it's a great way for you, if you're just getting started with Seesaw, to kind of get some ideas and inspiration for how other teachers are using Seesaw with their students. And one of the benefits too is that it's probably going to end up saving you some time. You're not lugging home so many papers or binders. Instead, you're able to see what your students know in kind of a digital space. You're collecting responses digitally, and you can kind of see what your students know, even all on one screen. So that is one of the benefits of activities. Before we get too much farther into the training, I do want to remind you about something. Of course, if you're using Seesaw on a computer or on a Chromebook, you're using Seesaw from the web, you're going to app.seesaw.me, and it's ready to go for you if you and your students are using it on the web at app.seesaw.me. But if you're using a mobile device like a phone or a tablet, so like an iPhone, a Kindle, an Android tablet, anything like that, and this applies to your students as well, we just want to make sure that you know that you need to update those apps. So for example, if you haven't had your Seesaw app open for a while, or you didn't ever update it over the summer, just a friendly reminder, you're going to want to make sure you're updated to the version of the app that's at least 6.0 or higher. Your app icon looks like the one that's up at the top there. It has the word class in it. And if you go to your device's app store, you can update from there. And if you're on school devices, sometimes those updates have to be done by your IT personnel. So be sure to talk to them. I just am trying to save you some time and some frustration, because if you're ready to start using activities with students and the apps aren't updated, they're not going to be able to see some of these features. We did a lot of great updates in about June, and you just want to make sure the devices are updated and ready to go. Okay, so tonight we're talking about creating your own activities. We have thousands of activities waiting for you in the library, but if you are going to create your own, which of course we encourage you to do, I want to just remind you that here are some of the traits that the best activities for your students would have. We're talking about activities that would encourage creativity and reflection, and maybe even having students pair up or collaborate with others in the classroom. And then the thing I like to talk about too is that the best activities are actually going to combine or integrate some of the things that your students use hands-on in the classroom, along with the creative tools and the digital components in Seesaw. So I'm actually going to pop out of these slides for a second and just go into a demo Seesaw class. Sometimes we do this for trainings. This might look familiar to you. This is, of course, a demonstration class. I use it with adults for PD and workshops. So these are not real student names. These are just simulated students that we use for demonstration purposes. And you can see that this particular class is set to an 8th grade level class. Remember, when you're in a Seesaw class as a teacher, not as a student, but when you're in as a teacher, you can browse the activity library from that big green add button. So you're looking for that plus, and then you're clicking browse activity library, and I can create an activity from here, or I can also do it from that green add button that I just pushed. So from here, I have the option to create or to browse. I would create if I'm in the My Library tab. So the My Library is kind of my content as a teacher. And you know, in this particular training, I'm not talking so much about browsing or searching, but if you want to watch kind of an old recording of a webinar I did just a few days ago, you could look for that on our YouTube channel, because I did go into a lot of detail about browsing. Remember, when you're browsing, you're starting in the Seesaw Library tab to look for the thousands of activities that wait here, including some of these collections that are featured at the top. And when I'm in the My Library tab, I can create my own activity from there. And of course, I can do that just by looking at that green add button in my Seesaw class. But you can see here, I'm seeing plus create a new activity. And that's letting me know that this is where I could create an activity for my students. So every one of those thousands of activities that you see in the library started this way. They started with a teacher typing here. And I want this training to be interesting, and I don't want you to just have to watch me type, but I am going to type a little bit for you just so you can see how that process works. So I'm going to say that I'm creating an activity for my students called Read and Respond, and I'm just doing this in real time to give you an idea. And I'm going to remind you in this activity that the activity doesn't have to be anything super complicated or fancy. In this case, maybe I just want to say to my students to take a few minutes to read from their self-selected reading material, and I don't need anything fancy there. Then I'm going to tell them that they're ready to do the activity that I'm going to share with them in a second. So I'm going to say to tap the add button. Now you might be thinking, well, why am I using the colons there? And you'll see this in the presentation. I'll have some more slides about this, but these are the shortcuts to get the icons to appear in the activity. I'll kind of show you what that looks like by clicking the save button. If I click the save button, you can see that this icon appeared here because I used the shortcut, okay? And I didn't complete my directions, but I just wanted to show you that that's how it worked, that the student would tap the add button. That's how they're going to respond. Then I would be saying to my students to choose, I'm just going to tell them that I want them to type a note to summarize what they read that day. And then, as you know, in Seesaw, the last step to add to their portfolio is to tap the check. Now I have a lot of options here too, and you know, like I said, I'm doing this in real time, so I don't want you to just watch me type. I could add voice instructions, which is really great if you're working with really little learners or pre-readers. You can read the instructions so that they can press a button when they open the activity to hear the instructions read aloud. So that's something awesome to do. I like to add an example so that the students have something kind of waiting for them to see a little bit of an example of what the activity is going to be about. If I have an example of an exemplar, like a student has completed the task successfully, I could include that picture. You could see I just pulled that right from my computer. I'm demoing from a computer tonight, but you could of course do this on an iPad. I can add anything that I've created in Seesaw here or anything that I'm uploading from my computer. Since my activity is about reading, I'm just going to have a picture of a student reading. I found that photo on the internet and I do have permission to use it. So I'm just waiting for that to upload. And then my activity that I've created really quickly in real time will be waiting there in my library for me to share with students. And if you're thinking a few steps ahead and you're thinking, well, how would I get this to my students? I'm going to tell you the video for how to share an activity with students is embedded in the slides. So you're getting the slides in just a few hours. They're coming to you in email. And if you look through the slides, you'll see the instructions for that. Oh, look here. I must not have typed the code correctly for check. I'm going to fix that real quickly. I can tell it's because I put my period inside the colon. Okay, so I'm going to update my instructions And now I have created the activity. Seesaw is giving me some reminders about how that workflow is going to work. If you find an activity in the library that you like, you want to give it a heart, or I created this one, so the heart is already pink, and I'm going to share it with my students if I want from this button. And then as my students respond, I would see their responses coming in and could approve them. Just for the purpose of the demo, I'll share with just this one class. But you saw how simple it was for me to create. It was mostly typing and then uploading a few things like the photo here, or if I wanted to audio record. And then this activity is waiting in my library. So anything that I create will be waiting in the tab that says my library. So when you start creating your own activities, that's where they will wait. I'm just clicking back and forth so you can kind of see the difference. And so there's my teacher icon, and here's the activity that I just created. Okay. I'm going to go back into my slides and say a few more things before I get ready to turn it over to Heather. Something I want to remind you is that, and this is really, again, I'm telling you this to save you some time or maybe some frustration. If you are creating activities and you want students to be able to draw or write on top of something in the activity, make sure you're adding it as an image file. So a file that's like a JPEG file or a PNG file, because if you're uploading PDFs, a student cannot write on that or draw on that or add a label to it. And Heather's going to have some good workarounds for that she's going to share with you. But I just want to remind you, if you have some things that you've accumulated over the years, resources and materials that you have saved on your computer, let's say, and you're trying to make them into activities, remember, you're not going to want to add them as PDFs, or your students are not really going to be able to write on top of them. A tip I would give you, of course, save it as an image file, as a JPEG, and Heather's going to talk about that, or just kind of practice screenshotting on your device. So if it's something that lives on your computer or iPad, take a quick screenshot of it and then make that into your activity. Or the other tip I would want to give you is don't necessarily feel like you can't use paper. That's what we're talking about when we say use some of the materials that you already have available to you in your classroom. If you want, just have the students do the activity on paper. It might be easier to just have them underline or highlight or circle on a paper rather than trying to do that on a computer or on an iPad. And then what you could tell them is that you want them to take a picture of it when they're done with the paper and then record themselves reading, because I think that's one of the true benefits of a Seesaw activity is that you can add the voice to it, which you can't get from just a paper worksheet. So anytime you're having students reflect and say more about their work or explain their thinking using that microphone tool, you're getting more out of it than you would be just if they were doing it on paper. So I think this is a really good idea too, is to remember you don't always have to have the students not do something on paper. They could take a picture of their paperwork and then they could record in Seesaw, and that would be kind of the best of both worlds. And don't forget, you can also use hands-on materials like manipulatives. I included the activity links here for you too if you want to look and see how this activity flow actually works and see an example of student work. And then here's another activity that's really cool by a teacher contributor named Will Swingle, just using dominoes as manipulatives for math in the classroom. I just included it here in the slides as one example of a way that a teacher was really being kind of creative and proactive about using some of those hands-on materials in the classroom. Okay, sorry, I popped out really quickly there. Okay, I'm so excited to be turning it over to Heather. How's it going tonight, Heather? Thank you for waiting so patiently while I was talking.
Oh, no problem. I'm so excited to be here. Great. I love activities in Seesaw.
Well,
So,
and I love that you love them, and I'm excited for you to share some of the tips that you have with our listeners. I'm going to make Heather the presenter now, so she's going to see a pop-up on her screen, and then she's going to be clicking through the next few slides. Remember, Heather and I both will answer questions related to activities at the end, so feel free to type them in the question box. Okay, Heather, I turned it over to you, and you can take it away as soon as you see the pop-up.
okay, so just looking at the next slide here, I put a little GIF into the slide, and a GIF is just pretty much like the short video that will just keep repeating. So you guys can go there. And the thing that I'm about to show you, which is all these templates, is you can click right there to get to that, and you'll be able to make a copy for yourself and kind of add more as you go along. So my whole thing is when I create activities, I like to put a template in there sometimes just to kind of give the students direction on where to go. And so the best way for me to just kind of keep everything organized is I open up Google Slides and I create a um, just a Google Slides document that has all the templates that I want. And that's the thing that I was sharing with you in the slide show today, because there's just lots of different blank ones. So you have like Venn diagrams, you have ABC order, so you can add like the labels on this one. You could just do like a hundreds chart. This one you could put for characters, or you could put a number in the middle for math. This one I thought character traits, there's somebody wanted but so any template that you create in here, you can download as a picture. And so that's what I wanted to show you how to do. And the easiest way is for me to kind of split my screen here. So I'm going to drag this out here for a second. Okay, so this is what's in the GIF as well in the presentation. But let's just say the ABC order one, and I wanted to create an activity. So I'll go to my plus sign, like Julie was showing you. I can create and share an activity. And same sort of layout as what Julie was doing, except this time, instead of just typing instructions, I'm going to come down here and add a template. So I'm just going to label it ABC order. And you can add all the instructions that Julie had said before. I'm just going to type a quick thing and just put your word wall words in ABC order. And then you can type more, obviously, like Julie was showing you, but just for time's sake and that you don't have to watch me type either. So down here where it says add template, when I click add template, it gives me those same options that they have when they're adding to the journal. So I can click add file, and it pops up this screen to drop a file in there, just as you saw Julie drop that file from the girl reading in the library. So I want this template over here, so that way my students can write on top of them, or they can add labels on there. So I'm going to go over here and click file, and when I'm in file I can download it. And like Julie mentioned before, you want to download it as a JPEG or a PNG, because that way the students can write on top of it. So I'm going to download it as a JPEG. And as you see right here, it popped up on the bottom. And so all I have to do is take it from here, click on it, drag it over, and drop it in. And now I have my template in there. So I'm going to make it bigger now so you can see. So now I have my template, and just so you guys can see that one more time, even though the GIF is on there, but I just chose what slide I wanted. I clicked file and then download and chose JPEG. Once it drops to the bottom, I drag it over. So I know it seems so simple, but sometimes you don't think about that. And for me, Google Slides works really well because I realized that all those things that my students were doing, horizontal works best instead of vertical. And so Google Slides, because it's already horizontal, just makes it better. So when you click on the check mark, you have those options as you do before. And so depending on the grade level, I left white space right here, so I could go ahead and add the labels of what words that we have. So let's just say I have because and go. Julie taught upper grades, and you can tell I'm elementary. Like typing these very simple words. And so I can just add all the words in there. And so that way, all the students have to do is click that label tool, and then they can move them over and put them in ABC order. And I like to not have the words on my template, so that way, whatever words that we're doing for that week or that month or whatever it is, they can use that same template for all of those, and I can just drag it in. But once I create the activity, I can always go back and edit and, change out the words if I wanted to. But if you wanted to start from scratch, or if you wanted to share your Google Slides with your team, and then that way everybody who's creating a template, everything goes into one, and then that way you can at any time pull that template. So here's my just kind of quick little instructions. And so when I click save, I have my template down there ready for them to use. Now, what I want to mention as far as like the Seesaw library, what I would suggest is finding an activity, especially when you first get started. This is what I suggest to a lot of the teachers I work with. I'm an instructional technology specialist, so I work with multiple campuses that have Seesaw. So I just tell them to find an activity that's similar to what they want to do or has the similar instructions that they want. So all those little codes that Julie was typing in, like the colon, add colon, some teachers have a hard time remembering all of those codes, even though we have kind of a little cheat sheet for that. So a lot of times I just have them look through and find one, let's say, I don't know, just like a simple one, counting to 10, let's say. Um, and this one is more particular because it's saying to drag these into the 10 frame, but I can always take it off. But if I look at the icons and I'm like, okay, I want them to add a label, I want them to draw, and I want them to record. Okay, so I'm gonna use this similar thing, but maybe I can just add my own template. And so that's what, when you like it, like Julie was saying before, and then I can copy and edit, and I can use my own template like I did before. So let's say I want to use my hundreds chart this time instead of a 10 frame. So I can take off this template and then add my own template like before. Add file, go back over here, and I have clicked on my hundreds chart, so I can click download JPEG and whoop, drag it in. So now I'm using a similar concept to what that teacher had already created, but now I don't want them to count to 10, I want them to count to 100. And so I can go in and change that and kind of make it my own. And I think that sometimes is easier because those teachers have already created something similar, but maybe it's not exactly what you want. So you can add in your own template, but you still have those directions that are there and already pretty much what you want. And you can just take out like this, how many apples or whatever it might be that don't necessarily go with the template you created. So that is kind of just a, I don't know, a glimpse into how I create activities and just the way, to me, it makes it a little bit easier so that I can just kind of accumulate everything that I've created at one point and change it or share all of those templates with my team. Because it's nice that they've created the Seesaw library and the school library for us to use, but sometimes I want to start from scratch, like Julie was doing earlier. I just want to start from scratch and build my own thing, and so that's kind of where you can go and how you can start. So I'll pass it back to Julie and see if there are any questions.
Heather, this was so helpful. People probably didn't know the awesome things you were going to talk about because a lot of the questions that were waiting for me in the box when I opened it were things you talked about. Exactly. If you
Oh,
want to go back to
great.
the, if you want to go back to the slides, I'm just going to say like the last four things quick, and then feel free to type in any of your activities related questions, and Heather and I can help you with that. I just want to remind you of a few things that are coming to your coming your way in these slides. These are kind of resources for you. So when you get the slides in your email, you'll have this. I'm not going to play it for you now, obviously, but if you want a little tutorial about how to get these activities to your students, you can play that. So that'll be there for you. And then the icon shortcuts are also in the slides. You'll see those too. Some people have already been asking about that. And you could see I even mistyped one earlier when I was doing it in real time. It's nice to just print it out, to have like a little poster, something hanging or taped to your desk or hanging on your board, so that if you're creating these, you don't have to try to remember them. But I put the link to where it is on our help center, and then there's a printable that one of our ambassadors named Gina made. If you want to print that, that's really handy too. After you have created a lot of activities like Heather and I, you probably have most of them memorized, but there's no reason to memorize them. Just use a resource like this. And then what's on the next slide, Heather? I kind of forget what's next. Okay, I just wanted to put that there for your reference, just so you know, if you're using free Seesaw, you can have 100 activities in your My Library. They're associated with your teacher account, not with any one class. If you're Seesaw Plus, you have 500, and if you're Seesaw for Schools, you have unlimited. So I just wanted to put that there for you for reference, and that way if anyone asked me in the question box, I could refer them to that slide. The other thing I want to tell you is that if you can, please respond to our survey questions when they pop up on your screen. That feedback is what helps make us better, you know, as we're planning these professional development sessions. So don't hesitate to just give us honest feedback as we plan and prepare some of our next training sessions. And then I think there's a slide there, maybe that last slide, Heather, that just shows them how they can connect with our community. Oh, the Help Center slide. I forgot to say that. Okay, Help Center and then survey. Our Help Center is really robust. So if you have questions about activities or anything else, visit help.seesaw.me. That's your first stop, you know, if you're having Seesaw trouble or questions. There's lots of great resources there. Okay, and then I wanted to say take the survey, and then the last slide shows you where you can connect with our community. We're very active on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. The thing about Facebook too is that we have Seesaw teachers groups by grade level. So if you teach first grade, you want to get in the Seesaw teachers first grade group and so on. It's really nice to be with teachers who are teaching the same things as you. So don't hesitate to join one or more of those. And then we record these PDs and put a lot of those on YouTube. So if you want to catch up on some of those, you can. And of course, you know where to find me on Twitter, and Heather probably has that info on her slide too for her. I'm excited to start taking some questions though. So Heather, do you have a few more minutes to stay and we can answer
Oh
a few
yeah,
things?
for sure. And I wanted to
Okay.
show, like, speaking of the help thing, I noticed this, and I've been showing teachers, like, when you have your screen open in your class, not in the activities, but they have a little question mark down here. So in case you forget about that, you can open up like a support, and it'll say, okay, what are you having trouble with? And it kind of walks you through like getting started and how to post activities. So if I click on activities, it kind of walks through different things.
I
So
know,
it's
isn't that so handy? I love it too.
like, I love it because then you don't have to like toggle back and forth between the website. So it's really nice.
Yeah, good reminder. Good reminder. I'm glad you're telling your teachers about that. Okay, I'm looking at some questions in the question box. So here are a couple of questions we get asked kind of frequently, and I saved them here so that we could both talk about them together. So Jane is asking, how do I take something and make it a picture file? And Jane, Heather demonstrated it specifically from Google Slides. So if you create things in Google Slides, it's pretty easy to just save something as that JPEG, which is a picture file. On the other hand, though, if you have things saved as Word documents or PDFs, one thing that I would say is just a quick workaround is to screenshot those. And remember, you can use one photo example or one photo template, I mean, in each activity. So if you're trying to think about how would my students do something that was a multiple page document, and how would they do it in a Seesaw activity, it could either be one screenshot at a time that they could write on or add labels to, or my recommendation, you know, if it can be done on paper, have it done on paper and then just take a picture of it and have the student's voice record. That's my favorite when I create activities, is to make the microphone the last step, you know, make sure they're reading something out loud or explaining something in their own words. Heather, do you have any other tips about changing things
Yeah.
into picture files?
Yeah, I was gonna just pull one up here. So like this is, I just have like a black line master thing, but I have a tool on my computer that's called Snipping Tool. And there's also like an extension that I have up here called Nimbus. It's like this one right here. But you can actually take, like, this is a document that I could print, but I can also, like Julie was saying, instead of taking a screenshot, I can just snip it, and then I can download that like file downloader, just click the save snip, and then I just save it, and then I can put it into Seesaw that way. And that's called the snipping tool. Snipping tool.
That's actually super helpful. And if you have time later and you want to type that in your slide notes, at least people will
Yeah,
see
for
that.
sure.
And I think that's part of it too. When we're in these trainings and webinars, we don't always know what device you're on or what your tech setup is. I think if you have personnel, IT people in your school who can help you, like you kind of just have to think about what files you have and then how you want to convert them into pictures will kind of just depend on your device setup and how they're saved, if they're Word documents or PDFs or whatever. So there is some technical help that maybe some of your school people could give you some assistance with. But the main thing you're going to want to be talking about is it has to be a picture file if you want students to write on it in Seesaw. We just want to make sure that everybody kind of knows about that. Okay, so I've been talking and not looking in the question box. Let me see what we have here. Okay, Amanda has a great question, and I saved it for a long time. She posted it earlier, but I knew we wanted to talk about it with everyone. So Amanda's talking about drag and drop. How do we drag and drop? Okay, so I think a lot of the activities in the library feature some drag and drop. And remember, what's being dragged is a text label. So you're clicking that T when you're in a picture or on the drawing screen, and you're adding that text label. And so you saw Heather do that a little bit with her template. She had, and I can probably open one of those too if you want to kind of demo it as I'm talking. That's fine too, Heather. But what students are dragging are text labels. So you as a teacher can kind of pre-populate something with some of those, and then students can touch them and drag them. They have to have clicked the T to move them. Just to be clear, if you're seeing people moving pictures, what they're moving is emojis. So they're still using text labels and they're typing using their devices, emoji keyboard, making emojis there. So you will see some of that showing up in some of the activities. It is helpful if you know and your students know how to access emojis on the device that they have. And the commands are a little bit different depending on if they're on an iOS device or a Chromebook. But what students are dragging is always labels, if that makes sense. And you can kind of see Heather is playing with that now. And Heather, I'm pretty sure this is true because I was looking at it earlier, but just to confirm, your Google Slides template slide deck is linked in this slide deck, right? Like this is coming to
Yes,
people.
it's on
Yeah.
the same slide as the little GIF that I
Okay.
showed. It
So
says
yes,
here. Yeah.
all of Heather's awesome resources, what she made, she's sharing with us. So she's sending you all of those
Right
templates, and
here.
you're just, yeah, do you see them? And you're just saving them one at a time as a JPEG. That was Suzanne's question. Thank you for asking that. Um, Oh, okay. Kathy has a great question, and this does come up a lot. Oh, we have multiple Kathys in this question box. This is Kathy with a K. She's Kathy with a K is asking me if a student posts something and they actually don't, they'd get it linked to the wrong activity. Yeah, that's kind of a workflow thing, and like you have to kind of work with your students to kind of understand the norms and the workflow about that. When they accidentally post something to the journal that isn't in the right spot, if you have item editing enabled, or if students can save the post, they can click those three dots and download or save it and then reattach it to the correct activity. I know that's kind of a couple of extra steps and you probably don't want to have to do that, but you can see Heather, she's reading my mind and she's doing all the things I'm talking about. So you can see we're a pretty good team actually. So you can see share or save is there. Like you could save a photo to your camera roll, for example, and then just upload it back to the right activity. To be honest, I think that it is worth really explicitly explaining that to students ahead of time, or really going over that as far as making sure students know not to post right to the journal and that they need to be in the right activity, posting the right things, because otherwise it is going to take some management on your end to like download these posts and then add them back to the right spot. So it can be done, Kathy, but I would say just work with your students to kind of understand the workflow around it. Do you have any other tips about that, Heather? Have you run into that?
Yeah, we've actually run into that a lot this year because we have Seesaw for Schools, so the students have multiple
Right.
classes that they have now, and they're not looking at the name of the class. They're just clicking on the plus sign, doing it, and so the music teacher, for instance, is saying, why am I getting all these posts in my music class? And so that was, I mean, we really had to just have conversations with students about making sure that they looked at the class, and we really went into a whole digital citizenship thing, like paying attention to what you're doing online. So it was, kind of just a teach piece for us, because the whole, to me, like when we saved the item and uploaded it, it wasn't as, it didn't come out as well as when they did it the first time. So we
Right.
had them redo it.
it's
So
worth it's worth going over the expectations in the workflow, I think. I mean, it happens sometimes accidentally, but if you can kind of
that's right.
front load it. And I taught high school too, so my students had a first hour class, a second hour class, and so on. So that happened fairly frequently. I understand that. Okay, so Serial's asking, how can students add multiple photos? So in Seesaw, you can add up to 10 photos to a post, but just to be clear, you can't write on those photos. So you can do a multiple photos post, but students could not write on top of those photos. I do think that's a good workaround, though, if you're thinking, I don't want to post one photo at a time, or I can't really create a collage in Seesaw, but I could at least upload 10 photos. Someone in the question box earlier was asking about what's the closest way to create a collage in Seesaw. And the thing I was saying is create your collage in any other thing, Google Drawings or Pick Collage or whatever, and then just add it right into Seesaw to add your voice, So I don't think you necessarily have to try to create the collage in Seesaw. You can create it, wherever you normally would. I do think Heather emphasized this point too, and I should have said it, but I'm glad she mentioned it. I think everything will always look better and work better if you are in landscape or horizontal mode and not in portrait mode, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
a good.
Yeah, because we've done it on Chromebooks, and whenever we have a vertical picture, it kind of squishes it a little
Right.
bit. So
And
horizontal is
I
best.
did everything in my classroom in slides too. I always thought anything that went in Seesaw, it always made sense to start in slides because it was horizontal. I agreed with you on that. So Jane, I was talking, and I think I have answered this question already. I had not seen your question, but I think we talked about it. One image in an activity post. I mean, you can add a multiple pictures post to an activity, but I don't know if that's useful for you because students can't write on it. So I don't know if you as a teacher, if you loaded a 10-page worksheet, let's say, for example, it's not going to help you because the students really can't write on it. So you technically can add multiple photos, but it wouldn't necessarily help you as far as the workflow.
Unless
Correct.
in
Go
an
ahead.
example, I was thinking unless you put it in the example, like you wanted them to see multiple things and then talk about it or something.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you have something you want students to thumb through, like I want you to examine these 10 photos or these 10 pieces of art or whatever, I think that could be helpful. But if what your purpose is to have them write on it or annotate it in that way, I don't know if it would work. Okay, Kathy's asking a good question, and it does not come up frequently. She's saying, can you take a picture to put in your notes? So if you're using the note tool in Seesaw, you can add emojis, but you can't add a picture into a note, if that's what you're saying. Those are two different creative tools in Seesaw. So the note is one creative tool where you can type, including typing emojis, but you can't add a picture into a note, if that makes sense. Okay, my question box is slowing up. We can stay another minute or so if somebody has another question. Go ahead and type it in. Actually, Heather, a lot of what has come up in the question box has been a lot of appreciation and thanks. People love your ideas and resources, so
Perfect.
they are very happy to have been here tonight. You are
Yeah.
welcome, Jane. Thank you. They're just still typing in a lot of gratitude. You are welcome, Suzanne. Thank you. This was a good crowd tonight. And Heather, I loved working with you. We'll have to do this again sometime soon because you had some really great tips to share. And I loved learning from you as well. So I think we'll say goodnight, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, the recording and the slides are coming your way here really soon. And feel free to reach out to Heather or I, and we're happy to connect with you further. Thanks,
Yes, for
Heather.
sure.
Bye.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.